Someone asked me where did this idea came from, and it came from an article by Robert Lance, or actually a YouTube from Robert Lance, where he was trying to explain biocentrism and consciousness, and the reference of the quantum mechanics and what Penrose said about it. So that's where I started digging into it. What did you all think of this idea?
Fascinating. Fascinating.
I thought the article on Taoism was interesting, tying it in to it, although I'm not sure actually that I understood a lot of the other stuff about this connection to quantum mechanics. And I mean, I do understand about the quantum mechanics a little bit, but the what's it called? Biocentrism?
Biocentrism.
That seemed kind of interesting. I never heard of anything like that, so that was kind of new. I don't know how widespread I don't know
Actually, you've heard that same story before. It's in the first two chapters of the book of Genesis. You have this strange entity that precedes creation for an indefinite time. Something happens. There is creation, and we're all here thinking. Uh, Genesis says it's God. Biocentrism says it's consciousness. It's the same wonderful and marvelous attempt by humans to apply a fantastic explanation for what we don't understand. It's just part of the same process.
Now, most of these thinkers are circling around something that my own practice has shown me directly, but they're doing it with wildly different levels of rigor. I've spent 35 years practicing self-inquiry and mindfulness meditation and have more than 7,000 hours, sitting and really watching the mind and watching it dissolve into the background. And so I don't need quantum mechanics or biocentrism to tell me that consciousness is primary. I've lived inside that fact. One of the things I do when I start to meditate is I ask myself, do I exist? And then, notice what I notice. And so I've asked myself about this existence thousands of times, and every time I ask, I exist. And, one of the things I've learned through all this meditation is that who I am is a lot closer to consciousness than the body and the objects of consciousness. And that's something that I know real deeply out of my own direct experience now. So I have a little bit different viewpoint on this, and I think a lot of these guys are trying to argue about something that I've seen pretty directly for decades now, and are trying to make some kind of physical explanation for consciousness, and as consciousness as something that will emerge under the right conditions. And to me, it seems like consciousness is more basic than that. It doesn't emerge. It seems like it just is. So I guess my viewpoint is closer to the kind of panpsychic viewpoint, but it's based on, again, thousands of hours of personal trying to observe this stuff and figure out what's going on within me.
Would you say that those were subjective searches
Oh, absolutely.
and without any need for proof or evidence? Yes.
Well, there is evidence, but the evidence is not external.
Right. It's the evidence of what's going on in your brain.
And
Yeah.
it's the evidence of existing. And, again, every time I look, I exist.
Okay, so uh, I want to get, I'm sure I'm understanding this because you're saying you look, when you say you look inside your mind, you exist, not by
I
looking
look
in.
within my consciousness. I'm not sure if it's inside my mind.
Okay, what,
So I don't have a
uh,
compass that points to where it is. I just know it's there.
what makes you think that your consciousness is not simply a function of your brain? Why do you think it's
Because
more than
my brain goes up and down, and I have a lot of different mental experiences. And what I have observed as my own consciousness doesn't go up and down as my brain goes up and down. So it seems like uh, they are not connected.
Okay, I'm still not clear. Uh, you suspect that your consciousness is or is not simply a function, a biological function of your brain.
I don't know.
Okay, so it could be simply a biological
It
function.
doesn't seem like it's a biological function of the brain
Could
because
it be? Could it
I
be?
don't think so.
Why? Why don't you think so?
Because again, I see changes happening in the brain and in my experience of the brain that I don't see happening to this conscious witness that knows the brain. So
I'm
the
still
brain's
confused.
got variability, and this, whatever it is that I am knowing, doesn't have that same variability. So the
What makes
brain
you,
changes, the consciousness, or what I'm calling the consciousness, does not.
why do you think there's a separation between your brain and your consciousness? I mean, is water,
Again,
is what, let me give a metaphor. Is the wetness of water separate from the water itself?
certainly not.
Okay, so why is it that consciousness needs to be separate from the brain any more than wetness is not separate from the water?
But again, here, uh, my experience of all this stuff, as I have said before, every time I go through this, my experience of the mind is an experience of constant change. And this other more internal experience doesn't change at all. And that's what I know. The other stuff is just somebody's theory, and I don't know. My point of observation is just all of this, uh, thousands of hours of uh, looking in meditation and trying to see what is going on.
I was very interested to see that anesthesia affects the consciousness, but not the rest of the brain activity.
What's interesting about that, Norman? What is it about that you find most interesting?
That just the consciousness is interrupted by the anesthesia. No other brain activity, looking at the functional MRIs, apparently is impacted.
Correct. And what is it about that singularity, not to borrow a word from quantum mechanics, but what is it about that particular aspect of anesthesia and consciousness? What do you conclude from that about consciousness?
Uh, I have no conclusions. It's just the observation I
Okay.
found to be of great interest.
Yes, me too.
Mike, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say, the way I interpret your comments, Richard, and I've done some meditating also, not nearly to the degree that you have. But I think what happened, this is my sort of theory of what meditation does and why I think it's so beneficial, I call, my brain, when I'm not meditating, I call it monkey mind.
Right.
It's jumping all over the place and going here and going there. And maybe monkey is a really good metaphor for me also, but we'll leave that aside for a moment.
Well,
But I think
monkey mind is the classic metaphor.
right, exactly. And I think it might apply especially to me, but like I said, we won't go there. But I think what meditation does, and this is where I think I'm hearing what James is saying and agreeing with him in this concept, is I think they're both subjective experiences. That is to say, they're both within our mind. But I think what meditation does is it puts us into a really different part of our brain, a different aspect of how our brain works. I think a very healthy aspect for how our brain works. It's all the brain. And I do think there are some connections. I don't think there are metaphysical connections or anything woo-woo or whatever, but I do think what happens is that we do connect to others through our life experiences. As we experience life, as other people experience life, there are commonalities to those things. And I think that in meditation, it provides an avenue, a way to access sort of some of those commonalities, some of those connections that we all experience. And I think it's positive in that sense, but I don't know that there's anything external to the brain in what's happening in all.
Okay, can I make a suggestion, a metaphoric suggestion, that to me, we're talking about an old fashioned film camera that's projecting images onto a screen, and suddenly the light bulb goes out. That is what happens when consciousness is removed, as with when anesthesia turns off the light. I think that is what's helped. That metaphor helps me understand what's going on. The machine goes on playing and trying to project that wonderful movie on the screen, but there's no light to do it with.
Now, what about sleep? We have deep sleep each night. The brain is dormant, so we don't have any uh, conscious experience of sleep. But yet, when it's over, we still can say, I slept well or I didn't sleep well. Uh, is consciousness going on uh, during sleep or not? And, I would say consciousness is going on then, but the mind is dormant. So my experience is dormant because of the mind, but I still know I slept well.
Different
Paul, you
And
levels
you
of
wanted to
may
say
knowledge.
remember
something?
dreams,
Hold
and you
on,
may
Paul.
remember your dream.
Yeah. Paul, you
Oh,
wanted to say something.
Well, dream is still different than deep sleep because dream is still a mental state, but it's entirely mental because your body is also dormant.
I want to give Paul a chance to speak. Paul, you wanted to say something a while back.
Probably it's just because of a rut I'm stuck in, but to me, consciousness is always consciousness of something. So reaching a state where you're not consciousness
But again,
of anything.
through the meditation that I've done, one of the things I see when you begin to meditate, you work to get a quiet mind, and
Right.
that's the first stage of meditation. The second stage of meditation is when you have a quiet mind, and then there are places in meditation that you're conscious, but you're not conscious of any object. And that's something that I've experienced numerous times myself. And I've experienced it enough that I really believe that, what I see is real because it's repeatable and it's the same thing I find every time. So consciousness to me, mental awareness is always got an object, but consciousness doesn't always have an object, but I still know it.
Well, I it's an interesting point. I guess, like I say, probably it's being in a rut, but the quote unquote hard problem of consciousness seems to me to revolve around how your consciousness of other things, and what is the relation between consciousness of something in
But
intentionality. But what you're talking about seems like
is consciousness of
interesting
consciousness.
is a different
It's a different meditation practice that many people do, and it is the heart of it is consciousness of consciousness rather than consciousness of an object.
sure.
Consciousness of an object is just an intermediate stage that you get to while you're working up to the real thing.
Well, yeah, if your goal in meditation, that's your goal. But if you, right now, for all we know, all the computers in the world are actually conscious the way you're saying,
Sure.
because they're not conscious of anything. They just could be conscious. So I
And
don't know.
when we're in the world, then we're definitely using our mind, and our mind understands things as objects, of course. And so we have consciousness of all of these objects.
I guess part of what I like that you're giving me that little extra sort of piece to fill in, because someone mentioned panpsychism. I think I was very taken with, Whitehead's notion that, ultimate reality is basically events, not material objects in space, and that all events have a conscious pole. It's just in most of them, the conscious pole is so de minimis that we don't notice it, but that in some life forms, that conscious pole of our events shows up and has manifests and has action and whatnot. But
But
I
it-
hadn't thought I
didn't,
hadn't put that together with meditation. Thank you. That's
Paul, didn't
Yeah.
Whitehead work on a linear basis? On time, on events? Or not?
it's. I'm not sure what you mean by your question.
Well, point to point, rather than no time. Linear rather than circular.
I don't remember enough to even know how to answer that.
I don't either. That's why I was asking. I was hoping
Yeah.
you could clarify.
I've just always found it fascinating that that he would say that all events have a conscious pole within them. So in the sense of biocentrism or whatnot, he would just say that, of course, all events had consciousness in them. So it wouldn't be a matter of whether consciousness existed before or not, as in Genesis, but just that it's part of every event. And so I've just always tucked that away, found it fascinating. I didn't really try to pursue it, but I don't know how that relates to the biocentrism argument that was in your videos, because yesterday was my ethics group meeting, so I didn't get to prepare for this meeting. So what would you say about the biocentric?
Well, I was saying that on the biocentrism that maybe the world is just one great big consciousness.
Sure.
It goes a little bit beyond that. The theory is that consciousness existed prior to the universe, just like God existed prior to the universe. And of course, nobody has a verschmigener clue what happened prior to the existence of the universe. So it's all pretty much speculation. There was a cartoon, coincidentally, in today's paper, where one of the characters says, asks the other character, "Have you made a will?" And the other character says, "No." And the question is, well, why not? And he says, because when I die, all life ceases to exist.
There you go. There's solipsism for you.
Yeah.
Hmm? So-
We were, while we were waiting for people to come in, we were having a little fun about the philosophy of solipsism. You know,
What's this we? White man.
okay. I was having fun with it.
Well, that's all you can say when you're a solipsist, right? Is
Right.
I was having fun with it.
I was having fun with it. Everybody else, because I created them all. was having
Exactly.
Fun with it too.
Exactly.
You know what, when I was,
Fred and Bill, I haven't heard much from you. What do you think about this subject?
I'm waiting for Bill to say something.
Oh, you're asking me? Well, like I said, I think I'm gonna mostly listen today because I don't know that I have anything of substance to contribute to the conversation other than I found it interesting, challenging, and like I said, I was most interested in the connection to Taoism. And I do know I read a book recently on quantum mechanics and the whole thing about linear, the time's not linear, and the multiple realities exist, and it's all stuff that I understand on an intellectual level, but it's hard to really relate to it with our experience on Earth. So I think I'm just gonna. I don't have anything to add.
Well, with quantum mechanics, string
is there
theory
some
comes
sense in
back
which-
into form.
I'm sorry, too many people were talking at once.
With quantum mechanics, string theory becomes relevant again.
Yeah, I know. Apparently, I didn't know anything about this biocentrism. That's a whole new thing that
I didn't either.
it's hard to get your head around a little bit, but that
Fred, what did you think?
Well, when James was talking about consciousness preceding reality, I wonder, is he then implying that you don't need life for there to be consciousness?
I'm not implying anything, but that's what Dr. Lanza and his crew seems to imply that, and it's contradictory, but most mythology is his mythology is that consciousness existed prior to the universe, and that consciousness now is manipulating the universe rather than the other way around, and that we're all part of this great, vast consciousness. His example was, for example, that uh, in a rape situation, there's a victim and a perpetrator, but they are identical. There is no difference. We're all part of this great oneness that existed before the universe came into being. And, that's fine if you want to think of it that way. I mean, the quantum folks say, well, the Big Bang happened, and before that, we don't know what was going on. Okay, there was something, and it went boom, and we have the universe, but we don't know what that thing was. Well, you can call it the little bubble, you can call it consciousness, you can call it wet water, whatever you want to call it. It's something we can't know. So to
Did
me,
Lanza really say that consciousness preceded, or did he say it was fundamental to the universe? That
he
that was
said
part of
preceded.
the beginning. It didn't say it preceded, did he?
Yes, it existed before the universe.
I thought he was saying it was fundamental to the
It's
universe, that you didn't have a universe without it, but not that it was prior.
isn't just this is just asking the brain trust here. Isn't semper paternal the word for always having existed? So there's no previous, no past. Don't know. Okay, doesn't really matter. I remember that word, and it seemed like because you're asking, did it precede? That sort of implies there's a time. If it's just constituent, then there's no sense of preceding or.
The word you're talking about is used to try and discuss the impossible, which is what would there be time if there wasn't anything?
Yeah.
Well, you know, okay, would there be any wetness if there wasn't water? I mean, we get back to these basics, which to me are fascinating and interesting and have consumed literally thousands of hours of people's thinking, but doesn't help me make breakfast in the morning.
Yeah.
Doesn't this to a certain degree go back to unified field theory? I mean, not to throw big words around, but or concepts around, but in other words, you know, my understanding, and I'm the furthest thing away from the physicist, but my understanding is there's sort of classical physics, you know, with, you know, I'm thinking in Newtonian physics, that kind of stuff. And then Einstein comes along with relativity, and there's, you know, there's a change, or they don't quite fit together. And that Einstein fit, you know, for the rest of his life was trying to figure out how do we join these things together. And, you know, and it's my understanding, we haven't done that yet. Physicists haven't. So we're trying to nibble around these edges and figure things out. And I'm reminded of Isaac Newton. I mean, obviously one of the greatest scientists of all time, who when he had written his you know I think it was the Principia,
Yeah.
the book on mathematics. If I'm remembering the story right, he had written this book, but he'd forgotten where it was at, because he was trying to figure out the date of the return of Christ. And he came up, by the way, with the date, it couldn't be before 2060
Yeah.
AD. So he's still in the running, by the way. But the point is, he was on, and he was also involved in alchemy and all kinds of things. In other words, you know, smart people like Einstein are trying to figure stuff out, and stuff is really hard to figure out. And so, you know, they go off into these dimensions. And I'm not trying to criticize, you know, the people that are trying to do this, in the sense that, you know, if you don't know something and you're trying to figure it out, you might go off onto these tangents. But it seems to me like what we have in some of this is really smart people trying to figure out some things that we haven't been able to figure out yet. Maybe 100 years from now, if we're not all consumed with climate change problems or whatever, maybe we'll be closer, but we're still not quite there. And you might get some people that run off in certain directions that, well, maybe it might be this, and maybe it might be that, or maybe partly this, or maybe partly that. But as James says, you know, I think we're really into an area we still don't know a lot about yet, and so a lot of caution is probably in order.
Now, the viewpoint I have that is shaped by these Indian ideas, the Indians have been looking at consciousness and the meaning of consciousness for literally thousands of years. And I think they may be ahead of the West in terms of actually understanding what's going on. And the Indian ideas have really affected my own thinking about it, but I still make a difference between what I think about it and my own direct, immediate experience. What I'm thinking about is just some idea, some mental fantasy, if you will, but it seems like what I get from the direct experience of consciousness isn't mental. And I don't know, I can't explain it, but that's again my own experience.
Well, would there be anything like consciousness if you didn't exist, or people didn't exist, or monkeys didn't exist? Like, is there anything of consciousness preceding all of life? Like,
I don't know.
we know from the cosmic radiation background that some 300,000 years after
Isn't it?
Big Bang,
Leftovers for lunch.
there was stuff going on.
Thank you.
That's long before there was anything approaching life, as far as we know. Like, can there be life back at that time when there was no universe?
Was there consciousness when there was no universe?
Yeah, like you're talking about meditation, but that's a personal thing of a human being. I don't
Right.
think I don't think monkeys meditate. I don't think plants do.
But they communicate.
Well,
Yes,
you know, it's interesting because even if I thought that consciousness had pre-existed even the Big Bang, so it was out there, permeated everything, there would still be a story to tell about when our experience of consciousness emerged. So I would call it emergent. And even in Richard's case, I would say that his perception of consciousness is emergent in the sense that it comes about from something previous. It took him a lot of practice to let it emerge, but it did emerge. And so even if consciousness was always out there free floating around, back to what Fred is saying, that it wasn't going to emerge in the nature we know it now until there were life forms to manifest
I
it.
suggest that in response to that, does the uh, pupa that metamorphs into a butterfly remember, does the butterfly remember it was a pupae? And does the pupae know that it's going to be a butterfly? I think the answer to both of those questions is no. So this concept of emergence is perhaps just that which happens over time, which takes us back to the fundamental problem. Is there such a thing as time? And since we all managed to get to this Zoom more or less on time, I got to think, yeah, that probably exists. Because if you can get all these adults together in one place at the same time, I think that pretty well shows time exists.
No, it doesn't actually, James. It just shows that we have a collective experience of putting together a concept called time, not that time naturally exists.
But if we have a concept of it and we can manipulate it like a cup of coffee in the morning, uh, does it really matter whether in some philosophical sense it's really there, or does it
Well,
is
they're
it
exploring
sufficient that
they're
it
exploring
works?
time travel now based on the fact that there may not be time. The other corollary thought that they're exploring is, does death really exist?
Presumably, space and time are constructs that we use to make sense of the world.
Not
And
necessarily the world.
yeah, I think there's things we do to make sense of it, but we manufactured space and time.
well, and then in quantum mechanics, the location of an atom or a molecule, you think it exists, but then when you try to measure it, in other words, it's affected by measuring it, and then it's an indeterminate. It's not clear, which goes against our linear version of everything. That you can't measure it because it's when you try to measure it, it's not there.
Yeah,
But
it goes back to Heisenberg.
yeah,
Yeah,
Heisenberg principle.
Heisenberg, Gödel, and Bohr.
but it does require measurement, but it doesn't have to be a conscious measurement. There doesn't have to be anything consciously doing this. The fact you can measure things without there being any measurer doing it.
How's that, Fred?
Well, take the cosmic background radiation. It, it came out of the blue from all over. We went around measuring it. It was always there from whatever. So there was nothing conscious, it seems, making this radiation there. It pre-existed our consciousness.
Okay, let's say we have an ice cube. We we have an ice cube in our hand and we put it into a box. And in the box there is a thermostat, I think it's a measuring thing for temperature. And that has a counterpart on the outside. And we're outside the box, and the temperature that we're reading from the inside of the box says it's now warmed up and the ice cube is melted. do we have to open up the box to see if the goddamn ice cube is melted? I don't think so. Okay. Same way with the cat. The
Right.
cat is either dead or alive.
You mean,
And
you believe when you close the refrigerator door, the light really goes off?
I don't
You're
know
awful
that.
trusting.
I don't know that, but if there's a mechanism that measures photons inside the refrigerator and it tells me there are no photons,
You're
yes,
gonna believe it.
the light has gone off.
Fair enough.
Okay.
I wanted, I'm sorry, I'm a step behind here, but I just wanted to say that how I think of emergence, we're talking about, is my example is water. And to me, what emergence, how I use the word, is that the properties of water would never have been discovered just by studying hydrogen and oxygen. But once we have water, we can understand its properties and measure it and then say that it's something that happened when the hydrogen and oxygen came together. So to me, that's what emergent property means. So I look at for consciousness when I use the word emergent as we can't understand consciousness just by studying neurons, dendrites, and whatnot, that we would not figure out consciousness from just studying those things. We need to study consciousness, and then we may try to explain it based on
Well,
those.
one of the other ways they use emergence with consciousness is they say uh, that consciousness somehow emerged from
Yes,
physical matter. You mush it up together right, and suddenly the insentient matter becomes sentient.
sure. Just like ice, just like when you join hydrogen and oxygen, the water is emergent and has new properties.
So anyway, one of the problems that scientists have with the hard problem of consciousness is they still are trying to look to see how consciousness emerges. And if consciousness is fundamental to the universe, then it doesn't emerge.
Well, maybe not emerge, yes, in some one sense of the word, but it if it came if it manifested itself when living organisms happened, then that's emerging. It's more like a debutante coming out, but it's emerging. But I see what you mean there, because when the rubber hits the road really is with AI, because with humans, we can go on muddling along the way we think about consciousness, but whether computers may show us a whole new paradigm of what consciousness could be. And we may come to see ours as kind of a quaint, biological creation,
Clunky
but
version.
maybe, yeah, maybe it is
Wait, folks,
one.
wait, time out. AI is the product of learned information, human information has been fed into a machine, and AI takes that data and comes up with probabilities. Okay, it's not thinking. It's
Me
not going to
too.
provide
Me
us.
too. I do
It's
exactly
not.
the same thing.
No, you don't.
Sure I
You
do.
do not do the
I
same
have a
thing.
very large store of sentences and histograms of word frequencies. And when I start a sentence, I don't know where it's going to end, but I kind of can predict as I go along what should be the next word. I mean, I'm not convinced that I'm doing anything all that wildly different.
Okay,
You could be wrong. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying that I tend to think of myself as working about the same way.
Yeah, what you're using, Paul, is a process called the Markov process, which allows predictability. And is the reason why you see incomplete sentences, you can fill in the blank towards certainty. I really want to go back to your statement of paradigm and the concept of paradigm shift, which really has nothing to do with reality, but just with a artificial predictability and how we look at things. Every time there's a paradigm shift, we look at things in a different way that allows for maybe a better predictability of outcome.
Sure.
Bingo.
Has nothing to do with the reality, just has to do with the manipulation of data.
Bob, once again, you've hit upon the core, which is this whole process that we've been going through today and in our reading has made us think about things in a way that we haven't, at least I hadn't thought about them before. And we've come up with some, I think, fascinating alternative realities, if you will. And that's what this is all about. And that's why being human is, and especially being a human in Bob's humanism group, is you get this kind of billiard table scramble once a month, and it's just wonderful. So as to whether we're ever going to get all the billiard balls back into a nice rack, I don't think so.
I would agree with you, James. I think it's fascinating on the one hand. On the other hand, after having done all of this, the readings and all of this, has your mind changed in any way about this? I still am inclined to think that matter preceded consciousness, and that at some level, whatever matter did, it produced it. Are there many people here who think I'm probably wrong?
Maybe if I could ask a question on that or clarify, I'm firmly convinced something existed prior to matter. But once matter was created in the Big Bang, consciousness arose from that because of how that matter got configured. Now, other people would say, no, consciousness preceded the Big Bang, preceded the universe. I see no evidence for that, but I see plenty of evidence of, I think we've been using the word emergence, that consciousness comes from a biological function of arranging data in such a way, as Bob says, that we get an answer, a reality.
Can non-matter produce matter?
Well, that's what happened in the Big Bang. So yes, matter wasn't, and energy weren't
matter?
here prior to the Big Bang. We know that. Whatever it was, we don't know and probably never will.
Well, the question really is energy matter? And is matter energy?
That's what I'm,
Well, Einstein covered that.
Yeah, E equals mc squared.
I agree with Mike. We're talking about things that we're not going to be able to ever figure out. We're just speculating about all kinds of ideas. Like when Fred said that the background radiation was I think he said that there's a consciousness, there's a measurement there. But to me, measurement is what we do as humans now. That there was, if something was there, it wasn't measured. But anyway, I think, like Mike said, we're just nibbling around the edges of all this stuff. It's kind of interesting and fun to talk about, but no idea whether how close we are to reality, I think.
I do think the only thing I would say to augment that, Bill, is I think, as time goes on, as more people think about it, and as really smart people think about it, like the whole history of science, we'll get closer and closer to something. I mean, I don't know that I would ever call it the. I mean, maybe the big leap that science took with the Renaissance was giving up the security of believing in absolute answers.
Yeah.
Hey,
It was going to take the leap into, we will do what works. We will, we'll change paradigms, but we will never claim we know the final answer, because that would kind of end the game. And what fun would that be? But
exactly.
That's what people hate. Everybody wants a simple answer and a sure answer. And so they make up all this shit to calm themselves and make it seem like everything is rational when we don't really know, I think.
Right.
I keep thinking of, I'm reading that book that, what is it? If anybody builds it, everybody dies. And I'm just thinking of machine intelligence. I think of it in terms of of crossing the English Channel. Like people said, well, men will never be able to fly across the English Channel. So it's a couple of Frenchmen built a balloon. They floated across and said, we've done it. No, 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 no. That wasn't flying. Okay. So then what happened? People built an airplane and they flew across the channel. Says, no, 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 no. That wasn't man flying across the English Channel. That was an airplane. So then someone built the Gossamer Condor and someone pedaled across the English Channel, human powered. No, 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 that's not really flying because you weren't flapping your wings. It's like you keep moving the goalposts. And I think that's what's going to happen with AI. We'll just get to some point where it'll just be a quaint argument about whether it's really conscious or not. It like kind of won't really matter if it can pass the Turing test and do all these other things. It'll just be kind of quaint to worry about whether it's conscious or not.
Well,
That's my guess.
I was going to tell everybody about this book. It's backwards on my screen, but I think it's frontwards on
It's
yours.
good. Yeah.
it is.
The Rigor of Angels by Matthew Eddington. And it's really about, it ties in Borges, Heisenberg, and Kant and the ultimate nature of reality. I've read this book twice and I'm starting to understand it, but it's complicated, but it got really good reviews and it really ties into the stuff that we're trying to talk about today. If you're interested in it, if you can get it.
Kant's kind of fascinating.
Yeah, it is. It is very interesting. And
Since we're bringing up going into the past and looking, Aristotle in his book on physics, you know, he had this concept of the unmoved mover, that which existed but could not be, you know, you could not find the predecessor of them, that which is moved without moving, or moving without being moved, which of course laid the foundation for all of the proof of God.
right.
Prime mover, one of the great silly arguments of all time. But anyway, because it's based on the assumption that there can't be an infinite causal chain. Why can't there be an infinite causal chain? Who said that? Aristotle and what's his name? Aquinas. But there's no law that says there can't be an infinite causal chain.
Aquinas just stole it from Aristotle.
I didn't hear that, Bob.
I'll get closer to the mic. Aquinas just stole it from Aristotle.
Yeah.
Right. What I'm saying is, has anybody in this group ever come across a proof that says there cannot be an infinite causal chain? If so, please let me know. Okay, so we're in a world where it's possible, at least as far as this group is concerned, that there's an infinite causal chain. At which point, the cause of things becomes a long journey to sort out, but a fun one.
Well, Hume would just say the whole idea of cause and effect can't be observed. You know, you can only observe that whenever A happens, B happens. So it's just a habit of observation. You can't ever see the cause and effect itself. So
That's correct.
this is what woke Kant from his dogmatic slumber. Poor guy. You know, he's doing well until then.
We're just looking at correlation most of the time.
Yeah.
I mean, well, they happen together. This must have caused that. And that leads us in the wrong direction frequently.
Yeah, correlation is not causality.
Yep. But I guess the argument is, how do you tell the difference?
Well, that's what
Yeah.
Paul was just saying. Yeah.
And we'll never be able to, at least some of the things we were reading said that maybe at some point in 100 years, we will know whenever you think this is what happened in the brain. We still won't know what caused that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I think we're going to be so reliant on AI by then, Fred, that our brains will have atrophied.
We
We're
won't
halfway
know
there
that they've
now, Bill.
atrophied because AI will tell us what to think.
I don't know.
I think we're halfway there, Bill.
Maybe that's as far as we'll get though, Bob. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, hey, Socrates worried what writing would do to memory.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and he's right. Who memorizes Homer anymore?
Yeah, right.
You know,
Most people don't even read anymore, Paul.
exactly.
Yeah.
That'll go by the wayside too.
Do you care if there is something that is more intelligent than us? Or would you rather stick with us, even though we're not nearly as intelligent or conscious as something else that came after us?
I'm not sure I understand what you just asked.
Are you
Did it.
really stuck with the human species, or do you really value consciousness wherever it goes?
Hmm.
He's just reiterating the man-machine argument.
Yeah. Well, will it get out of our control, in which case we won't know what like when they figure out what the possible complications of a dose of radiation for a cancer patient, because they have all the information of all the cancer patients, and if this information's all in the computer, then they're going to give us a dose and we won't know how was this arrived at? So I think there's a real danger that we are going to, which is I think what people are worried about, that we're going to lose the causal chain of how they got to that answer, which is both wonderful because that's going to be really accurate probably in the case of cancer treatment, but pretty scary in terms of decision making down the road as to how did we get to this? I mean, we're just trusting what the computer said. Some people do that anyway, but.
Well, it's all based on input. What input is given as far as its deductible
Right.
ability. The problem is that looking at it probabilistic, how do you determine whether the individual is outside the probabilistic chain?
You can't know all the data they're using, that it's using to come to that conclusion, because we don't have the brain capacity or the access to all that information. So we're going to be outside the.
Well, of course, that's true in our everyday lives every way.
Yeah, I mean,
We don't know what government is doing or how it reached its decision. We're just stuck with those decisions. So we're kind of used to living in a world where our lives are directed by people, events, and organizations. We don't have a clue how they reached their decision, whether the information they had was good, bad, or indifferent. So the fact that we're used to it doesn't mean we have to put up with it. We can rebel against AI just as much as we can rebel against stupid governments. Okay.
Is that true? Can you rebel against it, or are we going to be a function of what it does?
so far, we could probably rebel. But the worry is that you cross a point where you can't.
Right.
Most of the time, my rebellion is so mediocre. Like people say in terms of climate change, you could clean up the plastics. I think it's gone far too far for that to make a difference. We have to do something that will really make the corporations or governments really act differently to make a huge impact. Most of the time, I can't do anything unless I can persuade them.
Yeah, and if you just internalize that, you'll live many years longer. There is nothing we can do. Just
Oh, no.
live with that, and it's fine. What we can do is improve our immediate environment. We can pick up the garbage in our immediate neighborhood. We can deal with good, bad, and indifferent people in our immediate neighborhood. The rest, just don't worry about it. It's out of your control.
Yeah.
As long as you don't go around pretending that you're actually making a difference.
Exactly.
Right.
You're making a difference in your house, in your neighborhood. but any farther than that, it's all totally delusional.
And the wisdom to tell the difference.
Exactly.
Speaking of wisdom to tell the difference, what are your final thoughts on biocentrism?
I am absolutely fascinated by the application of quantum physics to the processing in the brain. A topic I'd never considered, but it's obvious that quantum physics applies to our brain.
Keaton?
My thoughts?
Yep.
Well, I was intrigued that there are so many Chinese philosophies. I thought that everything in China was Confucianism, but obviously Taoism is very popular. Yeah. And of course, both of my wives are from Asia, so I have a keen interest in what is Asia.
Francisco, you joined late. Do you have any thoughts on the brief that you've heard?
Well, yes, but you don't want to get me going.
Oh, go ahead, get going.
I'm new here. I'm sorry I missed the beginning of the talk. Quantum physics applies to everything. Therefore, it applies to chemical processes. Therefore, it applies to biochemistry. Therefore, it applies to the brain. How it applies, we have no idea. Penrose doesn't have any idea who is the guy, the most prominent person that proposed a link, has no idea. I am a realist, so I'm an electrical engineer. I believe the brain is an extremely complex electrical network, probably 30 orders of magnitude more complex than anything we can even comprehend. And consciousness is an emergent property of the brain, period. An emergent property has nothing to do with the underlying processes of the brain. So I think the whole Penrose idea of consciousness being related to quantum mechanics is just a publicity stunt. Sorry.
Or delusional.
Delusional. Consciousness is what the physicists call an emergent property, related to the underlying realities, but several orders of magnitude below. Quantum physics is several orders of magnitude below. There is many examples of physics of emergent properties that are not dependent on the underlying reality.
Francisco, I wish you had made it on time.
Yeah.
Bill?
Bob,
Okay, let me
what do you got in store for next month?
let me make a final comment, then we can go to next month's stuff. I still think that consciousness is fundamental, but not because of quantum mechanics. And the reason I say that consciousness is primary is because for me, it is experiential. Every time I examine experience carefully through meditation and these kind of processes, I see the same thing. And that same thing is consciousness, and it exists whether there are objects of consciousness or not.
Fred, do you have a comment before I go off?
Fred?
Oh, nothing else, no.
Okay, Bill?
No, I don't have anything else to say. Thank you, everybody.
Okay. Keaton, any final words?
I consider it all pretty darn complicated.
Okay,
Right on.
final word? Paul, final word?
Yeah, well, I'm just thinking that when I got my degree in philosophy, I wrote my senior thesis on artificial intelligence. And I was arguing for strong AI then, that, you know, we would eventually have it and it would be, I'm not sure I used the word consciousness, but that basically it would be indistinguishable from the results of human thinking, whether it came about it by the same way or not. But I bet that was 30 years ago, so obviously we're not quite there yet, but I'm holding out for it.
James?
I have nothing further to add. I've really enjoyed this. It's not just an exercise, it's a journey, and thank you very much. What's on for next month?
Next month is December 24th, is the fourth Wednesday, so happy holidays. May you enjoy the holiday of your choice.
All right.
We'll come back in January.
Okay, you don't have a topic for January yet, huh?
I kind of do, but I'm going to mull it around with James a little bit more. He suggested something and I want to explore it and see if it's proper.
All right, we'll have
Remember what that
to.
was, James?
Excuse me?
Remember what the topic you suggested was?
We've chatted about a couple of variations. I had to say my conscious mind is not bringing up specifics at the moment, but I'm
Neither
sure
is
it's
mine.
somewhere out there in the universe.
Yeah, I have to go back to your email and refresh my memory.
Yes, me too.
Okay,
So just give me a buzz, an email, and we'll kickstart the process. We'll assemble the coffee machine, make sure it's plugged in, and not forget to add the coffee grounds.
that's a good idea.
Yeah.
All right, well, have a happy holidays, all of you.
Thank
Yeah.
You too, Bob. Thank you, Bob.
And
Thanks.
we'll
Thank
see
you for hosting.
Yep.
Nice.
Great topic.
Yeah.
We'll see you in a couple months.
You got it.